was a warm summer evening in 1997 when 19-year-old Melissa Carter hurried out of her family's small suburban home in Phoenix, Arizona. The night was special. Her friends had convinced her to join them at a local community dance just outside the city. Melissa wasn't the type to go out often. She was shy, soft-spoken, and preferred quiet nights at home. But that evening, she was full of energy, dressed in her favorite blue dress, a small purse hanging from her shoulder, and car keys jingling in her hand as she waved goodbye to her parents. Melissa's mother remembered the moment vividly. She had called out, reminding her daughter not to stay out too late. Melissa only smiled, promising she'd be back by midnight. Her father noticed the excitement in her eyes, the kind of happiness that only came when Melissa felt truly free. No one in the family knew it would be the last time they saw her alive. The dance was only a 20-minute drive away, but Melissa never arrived. Friends grew concerned when the hours passed and she failed to show up. At first, they assumed she had changed her mind. After all, Melissa wasn't always comfortable in social settings. But when midnight struck and her car never appeared in the parking lot, the unease turned into worry. By the next morning, that worry had spread to her family. Her bed was untouched, her phone silent, and her car missing. The police were contacted immediately, and Melissa's disappearance was classified as unusual from the start. She had no history of running away, no boyfriend who might have lured her away, and no reason to leave without telling anyone. Her family insisted she was responsible, reliable, and would never simply vanish without a word. Detectives began searching the roads leading to the dance hall, but found no skid marks, no debris, no signs of a crash. It was as though her vehicle had been swallowed whole by the desert night. Rumors began spreading quickly in the community. Some whispered that Melissa had taken a different route and gotten lost in the vast Arizona desert. Others speculated about strangers lurking along the lonely highways. Still, the most unsettling thought remained unspoken in her parents' minds. Someone, somewhere, had taken her. The carefree evening that began with laughter and promises had already transformed into a haunting mystery, one that would torment Phoenix for years to come. Detectives quickly focused on Melissa's missing car. If they could find the vehicle, they believed, they would find Melissa. Search teams combed the highways between her home and the dance hall, while helicopters circled overhead scanning the desert floor for any sign of twisted metal or tire tracks. But night after night, the search yielded nothing. It was as though the vehicle had never left the city, or worse, it had vanished into thin air. Witness interviews provided a faint glimmer of hope. A few locals reported seeing a car resembling Melissa's, an old white Honda Civic, traveling along the desert highway that stretched toward the mountains. One truck driver recalled catching a glimpse of it just past 9:30 p.m., headlights cutting through the darkness before it disappeared onto a side road. But beyond those fragments, no one could say where it went. Each lead brought investigators to more dead ends. As days turned into weeks, desperation grew. Flyers with Melissa's face appeared on every telephone pole and gas station window across Phoenix. Volunteers gathered in the blistering heat, combing through miles of desert brush and dried riverbeds, searching for even the smallest trace of her. Detectives followed up on dozens of tips, strange phone calls, supposed sightings, even confessions that led nowhere. Still, not a single piece of physical evidence was recovered. Melissa's parents were tormented by the uncertainty. Every time the phone rang, they prayed it was Melissa calling to say she was safe. Instead, it was always another false lead. Her mother described waking up at night convinced She heard her daughter's car pulling into the driveway, only to look outside and see nothing but darkness. The absence of answers was worse than any truth. They were living in a nightmare without end. For the police, the mystery grew heavier with each passing month. Statistically, the chances of finding a missing person alive dropped sharply after the first 48 hours. Yet, without a body, without the car, and without evidence of a crime, the case seemed frozen in limbo. Melissa had not simply vanished. Something far stranger had taken place on that lonely stretch of road in Phoenix. As weeks slipped into months, the absence of answers began to fuel something darker in Phoenix. The city buzzed with whispers, each retelling twisting the story of Melissa's disappearance into something more chilling. At schoolyards, teenagers dared one another to drive down the same desert road where Melissa was last seen, convinced her spirit haunted the highway. Parents, meanwhile, tightened curfews, warning their daughters never to travel alone at night. Fear had spread like wildfire. One rumor claimed Melissa had run away with an older man, someone she had been secretly meeting for months. Detectives dismissed this theory quickly, but it didn't stop the gossip from spreading. Others believed she had been abducted by a stranger, a phantom-like figure who prowled the desert roads, looking for young girls. Some even swore they had seen a car following them late at night, headlights keeping a steady distance, before vanishing without a trace. The desert itself became part of the story. Locals told tales of cars that broke down along the highway and were never seen again. A few even suggested Melissa's disappearance was linked to something supernatural, that the desert swallowed people whole. Truckers passing through late at night claimed to see strange shapes in their mirrors, fleeting glimpses of figures walking barefoot on the road, only to vanish when approached. Though most dismissed these stories as superstition, they added a layer of dread that no one could shake. Melissa's family could not escape the rumors either. Some accused them of hiding secrets, pointing fingers at her father or an estranged relative. Her mother, devastated, stopped attending church because the stares and whispers became unbearable. The family clung to Melissa's memory, keeping her room exactly as she had left it. Bed neatly made, posters still taped to the wall, her perfume still sitting on the dresser, untouched. Every day that passed without answers was another day her family was forced to live in limbo, tormented by speculation. For the investigators, the rumors became a double-edged sword. On one hand, they brought in new tips, new calls, new leads to follow. On the other, they muddied the waters of truth, drowning the case in hearsay and wild theories. The line between fact and fiction blurred, and as fear grew in Phoenix, one thing became clear. Melissa's disappearance was no longer just a mystery. It was becoming a legend. 3 long years passed with no answers. By the year 2000, Melissa's case had become a cold file stacked among dozens of other unsolved disappearances in Arizona. Her family still clung to hope, though many in the community had quietly accepted she might never be found. Then, on a blistering summer afternoon, fate shifted. A hiker exploring the rugged outskirts of the Phoenix desert stumbled upon something odd. A faint glimmer of metal buried in the sand and overgrown brush. At first, he thought it was just another abandoned junk car left to rust in the desert sun. But as he got closer, unease began to creep over him. The vehicle was nearly hidden from sight, wedged in a dry wash where rainwater had eroded the earth over time. Sand had swallowed half of its tires, and thorny branches twisted around its frame, as though nature itself had tried to keep it buried. The paint, once white, was now sun-bleached and peeling, blending into the desert floor. Dust covered the windows, making it impossible to see inside. The hiker circled the car, realizing this wasn't just some forgotten wreck. It had been sitting here for years, untouched, unseen. When the hiker reported his discovery, authorities quickly arrived to investigate. The moment deputies brushed away layers of sand and confirmed the license plate, their hearts sank. The number matched the records of a vehicle that had been missing since 1997. Melissa Carter's Honda Civic. The desert had hidden the very car everyone had been searching for all along. Word spread quickly, and within hours, reporters and bystanders gathered near the scene, desperate to glimpse the eerie discovery. The towing process was delicate. Deputies worked carefully, pulling the vehicle from its sandy grave, their gloves coated in years of dust and rust flakes. The moment the car was hoisted onto the flatbed, a heavy silence fell over everyone present. Some officers admitted later that even before opening the doors, they felt a chill in the air, as though the car itself was holding onto a terrible secret. Cameras flashed, reporters whispered, and neighbors watched as the car rolled back into the city. A time capsule of tragedy waiting to be opened. At the police impound lot, investigators circled the vehicle under harsh fluorescent lights. The doors were still locked, the windows tightly shut, almost as if the car had been sealed away from the world. What they would find inside was still unknown. But one thing was certain: the 3-year mystery of Melissa Carter had just taken a chilling turn, and whatever lay hidden behind those dusty glass windows was about to reveal the truth no one was prepared to face. When investigators finally forced open the driver's side door, the stench of time hit them first. A dry, metallic odor mixed with decay that had been sealed inside for years. Dust swirled into the air, and as flashlights cut through the darkness of the cabin, every eye froze. Slumped in the driver's seat was a human skeleton, still secured by the seatbelt. The bones were fragile, yellowed from years of exposure, and draped in scraps of what was once a blue dress, faded and torn beyond recognition. For the officers present, it was like stepping into a tomb. On the passenger side floor, a small, tattered purse lay wedged beneath the seat. Inside were a few personal belongings, faded photographs, a broken lipstick tube, and Melissa's student ID card. Alongside it, 2 tickets for the dance she never made it to, the ink smeared and unreadable, but still intact enough to confirm the haunting truth. After 3 years of searching, Melissa Carter had been here all along, stranded in the very car that vanished with her. But the discovery raised more questions than answers. The car's doors had been locked from the inside, the windows rolled up, and the keys still hanging from the ignition. There were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of a violent struggle. The steering wheel was tilted awkwardly, as though the vehicle had been abandoned mid-drive. It seemed impossible. How could Melissa have simply ended up trapped in her own car, hidden away for years without anyone finding her? The medical examiner carefully examined the remains, but the condition of the skeleton made it nearly impossible to determine a clear cause of death. There were no visible fractures, no bullet holes, no obvious trauma. It was as though life had simply drained from her within the confines of her car. Some investigators theorized she might have gotten lost in the desert, run out of gas, and locked herself in the car for safety. But if that were true, why had no one heard her cries for help? Why had no one seen her car during the countless searches? Even among the seasoned officers, the scene left a lingering unease. One detective later admitted he felt as though the car didn't want to be found, as if it had been hiding something sinister all along. The skeleton, the purse, the dance tickets, They were all frozen fragments of the night Melissa disappeared. Yet, with every answer the car provided, it left behind an even greater mystery: what truly happened on that summer night in 1997? The discovery of Melissa's skeleton should have brought closure, but instead it unraveled a maze of new mysteries. Forensic teams combed through every inch of the Honda Civic, searching for clues that might explain her final hours. Yet the more they looked, the stranger things became. There were no fingerprints inside the car except Melissa's. No signs of another person ever being there. The gas tank was only half empty, suggesting she hadn't run out of fuel that night. And most baffling of all, the keys were still in the ignition, as though she had stopped driving and simply never started again. Investigators debated endlessly about what could have happened. Some argued she must have taken a wrong turn, gotten lost in the desert, and died of dehydration. But that theory didn't explain why she had locked the doors from the inside, sealing herself in as if she were hiding from something or someone. Others suggested mechanical failure. Perhaps the car had broken down. But the engine was intact, the tires undamaged, and no signs of a crash were ever found. It was as though the car had simply been abandoned in perfect condition, left to bake beneath the desert sun. Even the timeline raised disturbing questions. Search teams had scoured the area multiple times over the years. Helicopters flew overhead, ground patrols marched through the desert brush, and locals drove those very roads countless times. How could they all have missed a car resting less than a mile off the highway? Some began to believe the vehicle hadn't been there the entire 3 years. That it had been placed there later, deliberately hidden, then revealed when it was meant to be found. Melissa's family struggled with the unanswered details. Her mother couldn't understand why Melissa hadn't used her purse items, a small flashlight, a lighter, and even an emergency whistle found inside. If she had been alive for even a short time after stopping, wouldn't she have tried to call for help, leave a signal, or walk toward the highway? None of it made sense, and each discovery only deepened the torment of wondering how much Melissa had suffered in her final hours. Among locals, the mystery fed darker theories. Some whispered that Melissa had been chased into the desert and trapped in her car, locked away by fear. Others claimed the desert itself had taken her, a place known for swallowing secrets and never giving them back. And while detectives tried to cling to logic, even they admitted behind closed doors that something about Melissa's case felt wrong. Like an unfinished puzzle missing its most important piece. Even after the investigation slowed and the case was officially considered closed, Melissa's story refused to fade away. In Phoenix, her disappearance became more than just a tragedy. It became a shadow that lingered over the city. Parents told their children her story as a warning about the dangers of driving alone at night. Teenagers dared each other to retrace her final route, whispering that Melissa's spirit still roamed the desert roads, waiting for someone to notice her. What was once an unsolved crime had transformed into a haunting legend. Truck drivers who passed through the desert at night began reporting strange sightings. Some claimed to see a young woman in a faded blue dress walking barefoot along the shoulder of the highway, her figure illuminated only for a moment in their headlights before vanishing. Others swore they saw a car matching Melissa's Honda Civic idling on the roadside, its headlights glowing faintly, only to disappear when they tried to approach. Each story carried eerie similarities, as though Melissa, or something tied to her, was still out there, replaying her final night. For Melissa's family, the haunting was personal. Her mother refused to sell the house, keeping Melissa's bedroom untouched, almost like a shrine. On the dresser, the perfume bottle remained capped, the bed neatly made, the posters of teenage idols still clinging to the walls. She often said she could still smell Melissa's scent in the room at night, as if her daughter walked in only moments before. Her father, on the other hand, avoided the room entirely, unable to face the memories that consumed him. The discovery of her skeleton had given them answers, but never peace. Local law enforcement, too, carried the weight of her case. Officers who worked the scene admitted in private that the image of her skeleton in the driver's seat never left their minds. One detective confessed years later that whenever he drove that stretch of highway at night, he instinctively checked his rearview mirror, half expecting to see Melissa's hollow eyes staring back at him. The case had ended on paper, but the feeling of incompleteness haunted those who touched it. Over time, Melissa's story slipped into folklore. Campfire tales and late-night conversations carried her name like a warning. The desert highway where her car was found became known as the Vanishing Road, a place people swore was cursed. And though skeptics dismissed the stories as superstition, one truth remained impossible to deny. Melissa Carter's final journey had left behind a mystery that refused to rest, a shadow that still lingered over Phoenix even decades later. And so, Melissa Carter's story remains one of Phoenix's most haunting mysteries. A young girl full of life, gone in the blink of an eye. Her remains discovered years later in a car that seemed to hide itself from the world. No one knows exactly what happened on that desert road in 1997, or why her car sat undisturbed for so long. Was it an accident, a crime, or something far more unexplainable? What is certain is that Melissa's final journey left behind a legacy of fear, unanswered questions, and whispers that still echo across the Arizona desert. Even today, travelers claim to see her on that lonely stretch of highway, a fleeting figure forever, trying to make it to the dance she never reached. Perhaps some mysteries were never meant to be solved.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.